Jenny Waldron, and as you'll know, I have a channel called Centurai, which is what you're watching on right now. And this video involves talking about films. Of course, my favourite films I like to talk about. They're not exactly reviews exactly. They're just they're just here to talk about favourite films. And the first lot of films I'm going to be talking about is, of course, the Godzilla movie series, starting with the Showa era of Godzilla. Now, of course, Godzilla first came out in cinemas in 1954, and in Japan, and and I do believe it was a huge hit as well. Now, from what I've seen, the original Japanese cut, it looks very dark in tone as well. From what I've seen of it, I've only seen bits of it, so I haven't seen very much of it. So I've only seen the American cut, which came out 2 years later in the United States, which of course featured intercut scenes with Raymond Burr. Now, some people complain that they have Raymond Burr narrating over most of the scenes, but I don't think that really bothers me too much, really. I mean, it was just satisfactory seeing the first ever Godzilla movie. And of course, the US version was known as Godzilla King of the Monsters, and it came out in 1956. In fact, the same year, the sequel to the original Godzilla film came out in Japan, Godzilla Raids Again. And that's right. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first, anyway, of course, the original film starts off with some sort of explosion at sea. What is it? Then of course, as the film unfolds, some mysterious creature has been running around destroying ships and wrecking the land. And yes, until eventually you get to see the cause of all destruction. Yes, the mighty king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. Of course, the original name for Godzilla was, of course, Gojira. That's right, which means gorilla and whale. Now, the American cut, of course, as I said, was cleverly intercut with Raymond Burr, and it sees it from the point of view of an American reporter, which I kind of like. I really like that, actually, because although it does make it more easily digestible for a certain audience as well, and seeing, well, yeah, it's kind of like an alternate universe if you think about it, isn't it? So, what if an American reporter was there at the time when Godzilla attacked Japan? Yeah, of course, that story starts off with the aftermath of the destruction that Godzilla left, and it sees the character Steve Martin, which of course is played by Raymond Burr, the man who would later go on to be in dramas such as Ironside and Perry Mason, that kind of thing. Anyway, of course, Raymond Burr would reprise his role as Steve Martin in the Heisei series, in the first of the Heisei series of Godzilla movies, in The Return of Godzilla, or alternatively known as Godzilla 1985. Then, of course, there was the sequel, came out in 1956, which was called Godzilla Raids Again. Now, of course, like the original film, that too was released in America, but under the title of Gigantus the Fire Monster. And yeah, if you watch the English dub version, the English dub version clearly refers Godzilla as Gigantus. Of course, this is the first time we also see Godzilla fight another monster in the series, in this film, which of course the other monster is called Anguillus, a sort of spiked armadillo creature. And of course, Godzilla defeats Anguillus. Well, for those who have seen the film, you'll know what I mean. Now, of course, after a bit, Toho decided to take a break from Godzilla and concentrate on making other monsters like Varan the Unbelievable, Rodan, Mothra, who had their own individual films. But then in 1962, it came more of a landmark movie. Yes, this was to feature two of the most famous monsters in the world. Yeah, Godzilla takes on King Kong in the movie King Kong vs. Godzilla. In fact, this is the first film to do this. The next time that Godzilla and King Kong would face each other will be more recently in the legendary era, in the legendary pictures era of Godzilla. Anyway, of course, however, back to the show era. Of course, like I say, but then of course it was like I say, it was a landmark film, of course, and this will set the trend of how Godzilla films would play out. It'd be Godzilla versus this, that, you know. Anyway, it is of course, yeah, of course, it was East versus the West. It was the American monster against the Japanese monster, as James Rolfe would put it. Now, despite the fact, although it's a cheesy monster movie, but it's one of those films that's so bad it's good, and I love it. In fact, in fact, this particular, in fact, King Kong had stayed with Toho for another film with Kong escapes, but of course we'll do more on Kong at some other point. This was pretty much a crossover film that was distributed by Universal Pictures. Yep, the same movie company that also that brought us those Universal horror classics like Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and that, and brought them and did a crossover with those, of course. Now, of course, we come to the next film, which was 1963. This one was, of course, a number of different there's two different titles. Yep, it was known as Mothra versus Godzilla. Yes, this one, yeah, Godzilla faces off Mothra, a giant moth. Of course, hatches from a larvae, and isn't that right? I think, yeah. No, it's a die. I find it. So I remember right about the story that the Mothra was dying, and of course the two larval forms of Mothra hatch and defeat Godzilla in this film. Godzilla makes one of the most unusual entrances in the film by coming from underground in this film. Yeah, that's what. Now, of course, on the title, as well as being titled Mothra versus Godzilla in Japan, in the American cut, it was also known as Godzilla versus the Thing. Yeah, so anyone would think, what do they mean by Godzilla versus the Thing? Do they mean this thing? Or that thing? Well, as a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, what they mean by the thing is some giant egg. Yeah, keeping it under wraps of what it is. Anyway, of course, we all know that was Mothra. Of course, the next film, 1964, I believe. 1964, we're up to now, where it's a case of where Mothra turns up again in larval form this time to team up with Godzilla and Rodan. Rodan, in fact, is Rodan's first appearance since Rodan's first film before this. This is the second appearance of Rodan, and this is also the third appearance of Mothra in the Showa series of films. And of course, Godzilla and Mothra and Rodan are pitted against a three-headed dragon known as King Ghidorah, a space monster. Yeah, the first appearance of one of the most popular alien monsters in the Godzilla series, and would appear quite regularly throughout this era of Godzilla. Of course, but of course, the second appearance of King Ghidorah would occur in the next film, which came out in 1965, known as Monster Zero or Invasion of the Astro Monster. And now, of course, I remember actually owning this particular film on a triple set, a triple special of Godzilla films, which featured other films like Destroy All Monsters and Nibiru Horror of the Deep, films we'll talk about in a moment. And that film features its only leading American, Nick Adams, who had appeared in quite a few Japanese films at the time, and one of the other films he was in was Frankenstein Conquers the World. Yeah, that's right. Toho even attempted to make Frankenstein to a kaiju. That's right. Yeah, anyway, enough. More on that some other time. Anyway, of course, that's right. Of course, Godzilla and Rodan once again pitted against the three-headed monster what these aliens do from Planet X? Yes, they not only borrow Rodan and Godzilla to defeat King Ghidorah, but they also use some sort of control over the two monsters to wreak havoc on Earth, destroying half of Japan. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, uh, it's, many people regard this Monster Zero being one of the best of the Showa era films. I would certainly agree too, because it's a pretty good film, and it was one of the, as a matter of fact, it was one of the first Godzilla films I remember watching that was being run on Channel 4 at the time. Because yeah, now nine, now of course the next film comes in now the next movie we can talk about came out was in 1966, and this one I do believe was actually was supposed to feature King, was originally intended to be a King Kong movie, but of course I believe the French, I believe the rights to King Kong had run out at this point, so Godzilla's put in at the last minute, which you could probably quite can tell that yeah, it definitely had a sort of King Kong-esque feel to it. This one was called Ibara or the Horror of the Deep. Being a giant, as Godzilla takes on a giant monstrous lobster in this film. Yeah, of course, it's also known as Godzilla versus the Sea Monster as well. But of course, uh, yeah, probably not the most epic battle, but it's an enjoyable film. In fact, Godzilla doesn't really appear until like an hour in or so. So so most of the monster action does come from Ibira first, or Ibara. Depends how you pronounce. I don't know how you pronounce that. So, but I always pronounce it as Ibara, Ibara, something like that. Anyway, of course, in that film they revive Godzilla with a bolt of electricity using sticking a sword in a mountain. They revive him. Yeah, electricity seems to bring him to life. Yeah. Which yeah. Well, come later after in 1967. Am I saying that 1967? Yeah, I think. Yep. Was set to be the last ever film. No. Well, 19. Sorry, going back in a moment. Now, of course, in 1967 came a film. Was it 19? Am I right? 19? The next film was in 1967. This next one would be, of course, The Son of Godzilla. Yeah, now, if you like it or you love it, it's like, I suppose it's like a jar of Marmite. If you hate it or you love it, depends on your point of view. Some say it's one of the worst, some say it's one of the best, some say it's kind of average, some would say, oh, it's so bad it's good. But the way I see it, yeah, it's kind of falls in between for me. And yeah, Godzilla in this does look like he's been whacked over the head with a shovel. Yeah, I don't know what the costume department was doing, but Godzilla just looked a bit kind of whacked in this one. Yeah, of course, the son of Godzilla is, of course, Minya. Was it Minya? I don't know. But yeah, Minya almost sounds like a donkey in some scenes. In some film. One of the what I do like about the film is the monster battle between the praying mantis and a big giant spider thing called the Spider. It was known in the film. And yeah, so you got quite a mixed bag of monsters in this one. Now, coming up next was from 1968, which was of course Destroy All Monsters, which I do believe was intended to be the last ever film, as it featured a whole collection of monsters: Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra in larval form. Of course, was those Banthra, I believe, was in the film. King Ghidorah, Anguirus, quite a ton of, and in Baragon in the film. Baragon first appeared in Frankenstein Conquers the World, and Unbelievable first made its appearance in Varan the Unbelievable, of course. Yeah, and yeah. Anyway, but yeah, there was quite a ton of monsters in that. So it is a pretty good film. It's good fun to watch as well. Now, of course, that was one of that was, of course, one of the three films, Monster Zero, as I've mentioned before, Ibara Horror of the Deep, and of course this one, Destroy All Monsters, which was for which I had on a triple bill box set. I remember getting from HMV in Manchester because, yeah, because I had Godzilla in my collection. Because, as I say, I remember watching these films on Channel 4 on a Friday night back in the summer of 1990, and that got me even more hooked. Although my first taste of Godzilla was through the Hanna-Barbera cartoon series I remember watching as a kid, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, the next, next, of course, was in a film that came out in 1969 that, well, I call it was called. Now, there's two titles for this one: All Monsters Attack. It's also known as Godzilla Revenge. And you think to yourself, hold on, Godzilla Revenge? Who's he got revenge on in this? Now, the way you often want to ask yourself, are the events actually happening or inside this kid's head? Of course, a boy dreams that he's being bullied, and of course he dreams he's on Monster Island. So he talks to Minya, who's able to talk. Yeah, get your head around that one. And yeah, I don't know what they were smoking when they were really making this film, but yeah, but it is just weird. It is a bit of a weird film, really, and Godzilla Revenge. You know, of course, there's one new monster that Godzilla does fight in. It's called, was it Bagra? I think it's called. Yeah, also a cat-like creature. Bagra, and yeah, but of course the rest is just stock footage. As I do believe the film didn't take that long to make. So yeah, it's as a matter of fact that film is included on the DVD box set of the Godzilla box set, which I have in my DVD collection, and I have to say that if that film was on its own, I still probably wouldn't have bought it. But as it was part of the box set, well, you've got to watch it, I suppose. So yeah, they have it. So I can probably see why they put that in the box set because no, it's not about, so I just put it in there. And of course, now of course we move on to the 1970s. Yes, in 1970, 2 years after that film, of course, we have Godzilla versus Hedorah, or also known as Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Basically, Godzilla fights a giant piece of crap. Really, Hedorah is a pollution monster. He's a smog monster, and that can change shape and fly. Yeah, I have to say this was one of the messiest battles in the film's history, and yeah, this is one of those films that's kind of like be kinder to the environment kind of thing. Otherwise, some big poo monster is going to come over and crap on everybody. Yes, basically, Godzilla fights a giant piece of poo. I'm not kidding. Yeah, that's the way some people describe it. Yeah. No, I mean, there are some weird moments in that film. There's a bit of animation and neighbors, that kind of thing. And Godzilla's entrance in this appears in front of the sunset or sunrise. I don't know. But certainly a very strange film. Next, we come to 1972, and this time Godzilla faces another new monster called Gigan, a sort of cyborg-like monster with a sort of blades, sort of like a buzzsaw on his belly and hooks for hands, and sort of like a red eye. It's sort of a space cyclops thing, yeah, with a sort of beak, a curved beak kind of thing, and yeah, he made his first. Of course, that monster made its first appearance in the title Godzilla vs. Gigan. Also, was it? Did it have another title? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, of course, I say, of course, in this film, some cockroaches have put on human skin to disguise themselves human and opened a theme park, a Godzilla themed theme park, of course. Now, this film also features the return of King Ghidorah, which I do believe was probably for the last time in this particular series, and is defeated, of course. Now, of course, yeah, this is one of those tag team type monster battles, yes, where Godzilla is joined by another monster to fight two other monsters. Yes, it's a four-way battle. Yeah, the battle is between Anguirus, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, and Gigan. Yeah, of course, Gigan's obviously gets his backside kicked off into space for another return, of course, whilst Ghidorah is defeated. What happened? Now, some people asking, well, hold on, how is King Ghidorah alive in this? I mean, well, we can only assume that there's more than one Ghidorah, of course. But then again, why would there be only one Ghidorah? Anyway, moving swiftly on. Now we come to 1973, and this time it's Godzilla versus Megalon. Godzilla versus faces a giant cockroach in this, and again, like the previous film, it's a four-way battle, and this time it's you know some people from living underground are a little bit annoyed with all the atomic bomb blasts. So what they do, they send up a giant cockroach to throw a shit fit and wreak havoc. Yeah. Also, it features a robot called Jet Jaguar in this. Now, I do believe that Godzilla once again was last minute because yes, Godzilla doesn't really appear until like an hour into the film, and it looks like Godzilla has quite. And yes, but I did forget to mention about the last one that yeah, Godzilla has. But yeah, of course, yes, Godzilla has a brand new make. Looks like he's had a new makeover. This the producers had to put on a new suit, as the one in the previous film was definitely falling apart. As you could see in certain scenes, that yeah, parts of the suit was falling to bits. Must be all them battles that Godzilla had to endure. Anyway, King Ghidorah, of course, no King Ghidorah this time, but this time the people underground stand for another space monster to assist Megalon and help defeat Godzilla, which of course is Gigan. Yes, Gigan comes back for for another rematch with Godzilla. This time, yeah, it's between Godzilla, Megalon, and Jet Jaguar. Jet Jaguar grows to kaiju size in this, and is probably one of the most funniest moments in that with Godzilla drop kicks. Got drop kicks Megalon. Quite a funny scene. It's very obviously trying to gear towards humor in this. I don't know, but it's one of those laugh out loud moments for me as well. It's one of the bizarre scenes ever watched. Now we come to 1974 now. Now this 1974 marks the 20th anniversary of the Godzilla film series, and by this time they decided to be a bit cut the comedy crap and cut the silliness, and decided to go more serious again. This time, how to keep Godzilla be a good guy and be a villain at the same time? Simple. Two Godzillas. One is the real Godzilla, and the other is fake. The fake Godzilla, of course, is Mechagodzilla. As they say in the film, you could call it a Mechagodzilla. Yes, Mecha. Yes, a bunch of space apes decided to want to take control. Of course, they use a fake Godzilla to wreak havoc. One of the scenes in this is a remnants of Godzilla raids again, and of course King Kong. Well, of course, Godzilla the jaw of Anguirus defeat, yeah, which is remnants of the old of Godzilla raids again. Great, and it's a great film, and yeah, there's a scene where the real Godzilla faces off the fake Godzilla, revealing the fake skin and revealing to be Mechagodzilla. Yeah. Now, of course, now as you know, there's not only Mechagodzilla, but there's also another new monster in this that assists Godzilla in this one, called King Caesar. The only trouble is King Caesar is a bit lazy, and people have to sing to him for doing anything at all. Yeah, what kind of monster is that? Jeez. Yeah, you have to sing to him to wake him up. How? I mean, what is the point of him? Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, King Caesar wouldn't return again until the 2004 film No, the final wars, that would be later on. Anyway, we're coming back to the now coming back to the present film. Yeah, of course, Mechagodzilla is defeated, obviously, destroyed, and it's King Caesar goes back into hibernation. Godzilla goes back to sea, back to his homeland in Monsterland, I presume. Now, 1975 was the last film of the Showa era. Yes, it seems that it was time to call time on the Big G, and and how to end the series? Well, why not face him up against with Mechagodzilla again for a rematch with Mechagodzilla in the Terror of Mechagodzilla. Yes, I think in some countries it's also known as the Terror of Godzilla. Yeah, clearly Mechagodzilla is the bad guy in this, and the Space Apes rebuild Mechagodzilla with the help of Dr. Malfuni, who also uses an aquatic version looking at Godzilla called Titanosaurus in this, who has this annoying cackle. Yeah. Now, of course, the first battle scene takes place between Godzilla and Titanosaurus, and then the three-way battle. Yes, Godzilla is clearly outnumbered this time. Where in the other film, it was two monsters against Mechagodzilla. This time, it's the other way around. It's Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus up against Godzilla. And so that's just not fair, is it? But both monsters soon defeated, and Titanosaurus goes back into the sea. And yes, Mechagodzilla is destroyed for the final time. Although this would not be the last time we'd ever see Mechagodzilla, and would show up again in the Heisei series, which of course we'll be talking about next. So stay tuned for another video of Godzilla of the Heisei series that ran between 1984 right on up to 1994. Oh, sorry, or is it 1990? Or right up to 1995, I believe. Anyway, see you later.